Hello fellow astrologers, and welcome back to the final video in our astrology keyring fundamental series, G4, What is a Transit Chart? In our previous video, G3, we discussed what is a synastry chart, where you take two people's birth charts and you overlay them over each other and you look to see what kind of compatibility there is between the two. In this video, we'll do something similar where we'll take someone's birth chart and then we'll take a specific time and cast a chart for that and overlay it over the birth chart and we'll see how the transiting planets are affecting the planets in the person's birth chart to get an idea of what kind of obstacles or advantages that may be popping up for that specific time. It can be done for right now. It can look at what's happened in the past, and it could also give you a snapshot of what's to happen in the future. Let's start out by reading the paragraph. A transit chart shows how the current position of a planet in the sky interacts with the planet and placement in your natal birth chart. These ongoing movements reveal the cosmic weather of your life. What types of experiences are being highlighted, what opportunities or challenges are surfacing, and how your internal patterns are being activated. Transits are central to predictive astrology and help explain why certain times feel full of motion, emotion, or transformation, while others feel calm or unclear. So, transits are really excellent on telling you a lot about what's happened to you in your past or someone else. It can also tell you a lot about what could be happening to you in the future, or it could also be telling you about the kind of things that are going on right now. I think it's an excellent tool for people who are trying to figure out what to do with themselves, or if they're really dealing with some kind of issue or something in their life where they're just thinking, how am I ever going to get past this thing or certain bad stuff that's going on? It just helps you like say, well, here's when that transit's going to end and you're only going to have to deal with it for so long. So it helps with coping tools when you have those difficulties. It also helps you when you realize that in the near future, you may have this big window of opportunity that's about to happen. And it's a good time to capitalize on that, to take advantage of that opportunity and not let it just slip by, because certain transits can be a window that's open, but if you don't step through it, it's not something you're going to actually be able to do. So it's one of the reasons why I say that astrology gives you more free will than actually what most people believe, because most people think, oh, well, I don't have some predestined something that's happened to me. I get to choose for myself. Well, that's true, because at the end, we are the observer. We're the person who's watching. We're not our thoughts. We're not the actual things that are hitting us. We have the ability to choose whether to let that thing affect us or not. We have the ability to choose whether or not to step into that folly that may be showing up, or to take that window of opportunity that's opened up. It's your choice. All astrology does is show you when those downfalls and when those windows of opportunities are going to open up and when they're going to close. You have the choice to capitalize on those when those things happen. So let's read a little bit about the anatomy of a transit. Natal chart base. Your chart is always the foundation. It doesn't change. Every transit chart begins with the natal chart itself as a fixed foundation. The birth chart never changes when it comes to this part of the interpretation. It represents your permanent personality structure and life blueprint. Transits don't alter your natal chart. They temporarily activate specific parts of it. Understanding the transit always requires knowing what is being activated in the chart itself. So, for example, this part right here is the birth chart. This part will never change. It'll always be who you are. But as these planets flow through the flow of time, they'll make either opposition, like right here. During this time, there was opposition of Neptune opposing Pluto, or right here, you'll see Pluto, trine Pluto. These aspects only last for a certain amount of time, this being an opportunity to have a rebirth into a spiritual side of yourself. And then you also may have Neptune, which may be diluting things. They all just depend on the aspect that's happening at the time. Which leads us over here. The current planetary positions are when the planet's real-time or future positions are shown around the natal chart. And in this case, it's right here on the bottom. In some types of actual examples, you may see it put on the outside of the chart where it's sounding off on things. But most of the time, you'll see it right here in an inner wheel. The transiting chart shows the current or future position of planets in real time. These positions reflect what is happening in the sky right now, or at that chosen moment you're choosing to look at. As the planets move, they're creating shifting influence that interact with your natal placements, which will show more about what's happening or getting sound or what's sounding off, creating either harmonies or discordances by what aspects they're making. This movement is what gives transit charts their focus on timing and your life cycles. And that brings us on over here to aspect lines. Aspect lines are drawn to show how transiting planets are forming angles or aspects to your natal planet. So aspect lines show the angular relationship between the transiting planets and the natal planets themselves. These angles represent how planetary energies are interacting, whether harmonious or with tension. These type of aspects help describe how the experience may feel or how it actually unfolds on you. Aspect lines allow the astrologer to visually track active themes and pressure points in the actual chart itself. So once again, you'll see down here in this little matrix, it'll show when some of those aspects pop up. Because it's a transiting chart, we're only talking about 1 degree orbs. So in this case, you can see where Pluto was opposed Saturn right here. You can see Saturn's at 1 degree Aries and Pluto's at 2 degrees Libra. That makes it the beginning aspect. In this case, it was retrograding, so it was backing up over Pluto to make an opposition. Saturn plus Pluto transit signifies a major life transformation period, bringing intense, fated changes. Saturn structures meet Pluto's deep power that force you to confront limitations, power dynamics, and subconscious patterns for profound rebirth, often involving crisis in authority, career, or personal identity, leading to breaking out of structures to build new, more authentic ones. So that's an excellent example of how the pretty serious transit aspect, it can affect somebody right there. And so that leads us to this last bullet point, outer versus inner wheels. Most transit charts use a bi-wheel format, usually with your natal chart in the outer ring and the transit in the center ring, which is what we have here. As you can see in the outer ring, this is the actual birth chart. It tells right here, this is the outer part, which is the birth chart, and this right here is the actual time that we're looking at that affected this birth chart that shows where all these transits are going on. Most transit charts are displayed as the bi-wheel with 2 concentric circles. Sometimes you see on the outside, some people will do it where they'll list the actual transiting planets on the outside as little ticks that'll be separate from the planets and things that are happening on the inside. But in most cases, it's set up like this, where the inner wheel is a transit and the outer wheel itself is the natal chart. This format makes it easier to see how moving planets interact with the actual fixed natal placement. The bi-wheel visually reinforces the idea that time moves, but the core self remains constant. So also one thing to consider, the transits vary in duration and intensity. You have the fast-moving planets, basically the sun, the moon, Mercury, and Mars, which we didn't list the sun or Mars, are often affect the mood or day-to-day events, wherein the fast-moving planets pass quickly through the chart and often last only a few hours or days, but never usually a few weeks. But the only time that they'll last a few weeks is if they're retrograding, if they're passing, retrograding, and then passing back over again. But it's very rare that they'll last more than a couple of weeks. These transits tend to influence your mood, energy levels, daily interactions, and short-term experiences. Because they move more quickly, their effects are usually noticeable but temporary, often setting a tone rather than defining outcomes. Fast-moving transits are especially useful for understanding day-to-day fluctuations and moment-to-moment emotional responses. Because, say, for instance, a Mars transit, like right here, Mars is about to conjunct Venus. And a Mars transit typically only lasts about 3 days unless it goes stationary and backs up. Then it'll come back and affect you again as it's backing up. And then when it goes stationary again and comes back forward, it can do something. This was a good example here of Saturn backing up, where it actually backed up. It actually crossed over once and made its entire transit from 3 degrees all the way over to 2 degrees and then backed up. As you can see, it's almost at the end of backing up. When it's done retrograding, it'll go forward again and pass over. But that's getting into the slower planets. So let's talk about the slower moving planets, which are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, signaling long-term change, growth, or challenges. So the slower moving transits unfold over months and sometimes even years, creating extended period of development or change. These transits often are associated with major life themes such as growth, responsibility, restructuring, or transformation, which is what we were talking about earlier when we talked about this Saturn opposed Pluto, which was a major transformation part for Dad here back in July. Their influence is less about daily mood and more about long-term shifts in directions and perspectives. Because of their durations, slower transits tend to mark important chapters rather than just little isolated events. So take, for instance, this Pluto trine Pluto will last for over a year because Pluto will go forward and then it'll go back. As you can see right here, Pluto has already made a transit in this trine and it's making a retrograde right now. So this is the second time it's passed. It'll eventually go all the way past and go stationary and make its third pass when it moves forward to go through a third time. And this whole transit will take well over a year. Where Mars transit, even if it did go forward 3 days and stop, it may take about 4 or 5 days to back up and then maybe another 3 or 4 days to go forward. That's only taking a couple of weeks to make that transit. Where stuff like the moon, if it's doing the same thing, it'll happen even quicker because the moon makes transits during the course of a day. So it's super fast. But when you're talking about Pluto, the slowest planet of them all, this thing takes over a year. So those are big things to consider when you're looking at transits. Some happen quick, some happen over the course of a very long time. So let's sum up and finish and read what the final paragraph has to say. Reading transits charts help with timing. From choosing when to launch a business to understanding why emotions or relationships are shifting. They don't cause things to happen, but reflect the themes and patterns you're navigating. Which brings it all back to the fact that despite what the universe is throwing at you and what the snapshot of what this material form is being left to work with in this life, these two put together tell you what's happening in your life at different times. You have the choice because you are the observer. These thoughts and these transits aren't who you are. You are the observer. You are the person observing these things happening to you. And you have the choice to either take these opportunities like this trine right here, or let these obstacles affect you negatively. You can learn to overcome these obstacles, or you can also take advantage of these opportunities. It's your choice. And I think that sums up G4, which actually sums up the entire G series, and this actually is the final part, the Astrology Keyring Fundamental series. In our future series, we'll be actually doing real birth charts for people where we'll get involved with talking about all the planets in the signs, the planets in the houses, and the aspects that are happening with birth charts, as well as we will be doing synastry and transit charts to show people how they actually work. Stay tuned for the future series that we come out with where we talk about those things. And we'll probably have a few other things that we'll touch on as well. Thank you for staying with us to the end of the Astrology Keyring Fundamentals series. We hope you have enjoyed this video from our Astrology Keyring series. If you like the content, please like, follow, and share with your friends. Thank you for watching and have a blessed journey.